This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris, and today I'm making a batch of summer squash and tomato ragu. Ragu is traditionally a really thick meat and tomato stew, but I'm taking it all vegetarian today, using the plentiful summer squash and tomatoes that we find either at the farmer's market or in our own gardens. Now for me, I was able to harvest all of this squash from my garden, but my tomatoes aren't quite ready yet, so I got those at the farmer's market, so you can kind of mix and match as you like. Now I have a couple of different kinds of squash that I have. This is called a papaya summer squash. I have two different kinds of zucchini that I'm going to be cutting up. I'm going to start with my little 8-ball zucchini. I'm going to cut the tops and bottoms off. I'm not going to use those. And then I'm going to cut this, I think, into thirds because it's such a big squash. But what you want to do, no matter what size your squash is, you want to cut it into about 1/4 of an inch thin slices. That way it will cook real nice and quickly in our ragu. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut up my papaya squash. This one I think I'm just going to cut in 4ths. Now I've got my 4-cup measuring cup filled up, and so I want to offload that into my colander. Now I have my colander sitting on a plate, and I'm going to just start putting my squash in here. I've gone ahead and cut up another 3 cups, so now in my colander I have a total of 7 cups of sliced summer squash. And to my squash I'm going to sprinkle in a teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to sprinkle a little bit in, and then I'm going to toss the squash around with my hands a little bit. What that salt is going to do is it's going to start to have the squash release its water, because you know squash is just loaded with liquid, and we want to get some of that out a little bit. So that's why I have my colander on the plate. It's going to catch that water as the salt kind of leaches it out. Now while my squash is doing its thing, I'm going to get my tomatoes ready. So I have a pound of fresh tomatoes, and all I'm going to do with them is I'm just going to dice them up. Now if you find you have any really ripe tomatoes like these are, this is a great dish to put them in because we are going to be cooking them down. So they've got lots of really good flavor. I'm also going to chop up 1 onion, and to the onion, right on top, I'm going to mince 1 clove of garlic. I also have 1/3 of a cup of chopped pancetta, and I'm going to move that right over with my onion. And then at the very end of the cooking process, I'm going to add some fresh parsley. So I've gotten some out of the garden. I'm going to chop up 1 tablespoon of that, and I'm going to set that aside. And then I also have some fresh basil. So I'm going to take some leaves off of it, and I'm going to gather the leaves together in a nice little pile. And then I'm just going to kind of roll them up like this, and then I'll take my knife and just run it right through, and then I'll chop that up. And measure out a tablespoon of that, and I'll set that aside as well. Now over here at this stove I have one of my medium-sized pans, and I've got it on medium heat. I'm going to drizzle about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the bottom. I'm going to let that heat up for just a couple of minutes, and then to that I'm going to add my onion, my garlic, and the pancetta. And I'm going to stir this around, and I'm going to let this cook for about 10 minutes. And every few minutes, I'm just going to give this a little stir. Now after 10 minutes, we've got a little bit of browning going on, which is perfect. And now I'm going to take my tomatoes and add those in there. I'm going to stir that around, and I'm going to let this cook for about 7 minutes. Now while our tomatoes are cooking, I thought I'd show you just how much liquid comes off the squash. You can see it's still dripping here. And I'm just going to pour what I've gotten so far off onto a bowl just to show you. Isn't that amazing how much liquid has come out? We're just going to let this continue to drain until our tomatoes are cooked through. Now with the tomatoes, I'm just going to stir them every now and then. You can see they're really breaking down nicely. Now after the 7 minutes, I'm going to take all my squash, I'm going to pop that into the pan and give that a stir. Now what's going to happen is the summer squash is going to start to break down. So again, I'm just going to leave this on medium heat for a while, and I'm just going to stir it every now and then. And after 8 minutes, I'm going to turn this heat down to medium-low and let it continue to cook. Now as our ragu cooks, it's supposed to be really, really thick. So I wanted to show you when I use my wooden spoon and I pull that back, do you see how that sauce still comes together? That lets me know that this isn't quite thick enough yet. Now after 15 minutes, you can see it's coming together a lot slower, so that tells me that we're getting thicker. So after 20 minutes, you can see the sauce isn't coming together at all here in the center, so that tells me we're ready to add our herbs. So I'm going to take this off the heat, and I'm going to bring it back over here off the stove. I'm going to add my parsley, my basil, and some black pepper. And I'm going to stir that up real well, and then I'm going to taste this to see if it needs any more salt. Now at this point, you can just let this ragu sit and cool to room temperature, or there's a few other ways you can serve it. Let me show you. Now, one of the ways you can serve this is just let the ragu come to room temperature, and then just spoon it into a small bowl, and you can serve it as an antipasto, and people can just spoon it on their plates. It's delicious that way. Another way you can serve this is to take some baguette and toast it on both sides. Then take a whole garlic clove that you've peeled and just rub it along the tops of the bread. And what happens is that toasted bread works as almost like a sander, and it just sands off just little pieces of garlic and really flavors this bread nicely. Then you just take some of your ragu and spoon that right on top of your toasted bread, and that makes an excellent bruschetta. And then one last thing you can do is take some cooked pasta and spoon your ragu right on top. Now if you want to add some Parmesan cheese on top, it's also great that way. Now if you'd like to try this summer squash and tomato ragu at home, just go to our website and visit the Farmers Market Gourmet show notes, and I'll have the recipe there for you. And as always, if you have any questions, please send me an email. I'll see you next time.